Welcome back, fellow historians. Today we're going to be talking about native tribes of Texas, starting with the Cuauhtecans. They were a roaming group. They didn't stay in one place. They roamed around. They gathered berries. They also hunted. So they were hunters and gatherers, nomadic people. They also did this thing called endurance hunting. Cabeza de Vaca, the Spanish explorer, said that the Cuauhtecans could run down a deer, not in speed, but they could outrun it that the deer would get so tired it would collapse. The next tribe is the Karankawa. They were powerful runners and swimmers. They played competitive games, and wrestling was very popular. They lived along the Gulf Coast. Right here we can see the Karankawas in their huts, and they hunted. Now, a little bit of controversy about the Karankawa is they were rumored to be cannibals, which means they ate people. This is what they call a competing narrative because, of course, the Karankawas dispute that. They said, no, our ancestors weren't cannibals. But according to Texas historians, here we see a marker. After finding bones of 2 men eaten by Karankawa Indians, Stephen F. Austin and 100 Texans met near here with a priest and men of La Bahia, where the Indians had taken refuge. The Indians were pledged to keep away from Texas colony. Breaking of the treaty caused the tribe later to be driven from Texas. So we have a competing narrative, 2 histories that conflict. Were they or were they not cannibals? The next tribe is the Jumano. Jumano, fascinating tribe. Look at this picture. And what I want you pay attention to this yellow dot right here, that's corn. The Jumano were an agricultural group. They built cities and they farmed. So right here in this picture, we can see a Jumano man and woman, and they're carrying plants. They also have pots. Very interesting. Maternal line, as was still reflected by kinship terms recorded as late as the early 1900s, which means that it ran through the mother, not the father. They also recognized clans, kinship groups that trace their heritage to a common ancestor through the female line. The clans were named after an animal, such as bison, bear, raccoon, or celestial phenomena like sun, thunder, and were ranked. Some clans having a higher social status than others, meaning some tribes or some people were more important than others. Presumably the leaders were members of the highest ranked clans. Marriage typically occurred between members of different clans. Beyond these meager characterizations, the Caddo kinship system remains poorly understood in comparison of other tribes. I wish we knew more about the Caddo. So interesting, so interesting. And it ran through the mother's line, so your last name would not be your father's last name. Your last name would be your mother's last name. How interesting. The next group of Indians that we're going to get into are the Plains Indians. These are the traditional Indians, like the Kiowa. They're traditional, the kind that you're going to see in Hollywood, bow and arrow, hunting buffalo, living out there, very warlike, fighting with each other. Another group, the Apache, very strong tribe. The Apache were fleeing from an even scarier enemy, which were the Comanche. And we're going to get into the Comanche later when we talk about the Indian Wars with the Texans this year. But what I want to do now is I want to show you what a buffalo hunt is like, because the Indians lived off of buffalo. So let's check this out. Now the next term I want to teach you is sedentary. That means they stay in one place. So does that mean they were hunters and gatherers, or were they farmers? They were farmers. But they lived in the mountains and the basins. Does that make any sense? They were farmers. And this next group we're going to talk about is the Jumano, which were also known as the Pueblo. Some people refer to Jumano as Pueblo, which means village. And here's a picture of some of their cities that they built. So interesting. They look like our cities. These houses, these square houses. Very interesting. Jumano living out in the Pueblo right here. There's one in the canyons. So that wraps up our lesson on Texas Indians, Native Americans of Texas. And I want to leave you with this picture of the Jumano. I want this to be your lasting impression of the Indians that lived in Texas. They did have a civilization. They did have a language, a culture, all of their own. They weren't just prehistoric cavemen, very organized farming, cities. Some were hunters and gatherers, but a lot were also in cities. So we'll see you next time when these Native Americans encounter European explorers. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.